Carr is a native Philadelphian who was educated at LaSalle and Bryn Mawr College, where he earned a master's in American history. Charles has worked in social and community development services for 45 years. Charles has also been active in raising funds for various missions and organizations serving the poorest of the poor in Haiti. In 2007, Charles was the Mad Poets Review First Prize winner for his poem, Waiting to Come North. In 2009, Cradle Press of St. Louis published Charles's first book of poetry, Paradise, Pennsylvania. In January of this year, Haitian Mud Pies and Other Poems, published by the Moonstone Art Center, was released. Charles' poems have been published in various print and online local and national poetry journals. Charles is the host of Philly Loves Poetry, a collaborative live broadcast on the first Tuesday of the month. For 5 years, he hosted a Moonstone poetry series at Fergie's Pub on the second Wednesday of each month. On September 26, 2013, Charles read poems in honor of the International 100,000 Poets for Peace at the Garden of Remembrance in Dublin, Ireland. Charles is presently the president of the board of Moonstone Incorporated, and we are very lucky and honored to have him. Thank you.
Could you do me a favor?
Of course.
Just see if I'm
Yeah.
right with this.
Sure. Does this go up?
Yeah, it should go.
The telescope's up. Should have the camera person do this. Oh, there it goes. There it goes.
Great. Now it's
There you go.
Okay.
I think we're better. There we go.
Okay, it's better.
I think it's good now. Thank you.
Well, thank you, Brooke, for that introduction, and thank you for Anthony Brooke for hosting this series. And a few weeks ago, I was at the Mad Poets Festival in Media, and I haven't been around Mad Poets for a while. One, because of the pandemic, but it was such a great event. A, because it was so well organized by you two. And secondly, I got to see people I haven't seen in 2-3 years, mainly because of the pandemic. Plus people do live outside the city. So thank you very much for that, and thank you for inviting me to this. I feel it's a real honor. And I'll say, I was introduced that I host this Philly Loves Poetry. It's on PhillyCam, and now we're doing it by virtual. It was in studio up until the pandemic. And in February, our featured guests are Anthony and Brooke. So,
looking forward to it.
I really try to create these shows as themed shows. So this is the first time I've ever had a husband and wife combination. I've had fathers and sons, and mothers and daughters, but no husband and wife. So this will be a great experience for people who kind of understand what it's like to be married to people who are artists and poets. So tonight, just to kind of, it's tough to describe my poetry, but you say, well, what do you really concentrate on? I'm very much focused on the environment. I'm very much focused on the destruction of nature. And all those things really show up in my poetry. My poetry can be very political. But tonight, what I've really tried to do when I go to a place that serves food and drink, I try to incorporate my poems about food. And I have a whole series of poems that are just about food. That's not all that I'm going to read, but I had a lot of fun with these poems, and I had a lot of fun in writing them. But, and at the Mad Poets, the first poem I read was Mama, my poetry Mama, which I really kind of characterized as my muse. But I have another poem that is called My Muse. It is never me, it is always something that he has borrowed from the world that is a result of language. He drives words out of my overfed brain. Most of the thinking has happened before my pen meets the page. Whatever words you believe you own are his. He uses me as he pleases. He has borrowed this sentence: there is more wilderness in you than in nature. It is another borrowed thought that keeps me on my toes, a borrowed pronouncement. And it's with sentences like these that he creates an image of me. His function is to function for me, function as a reenactment of the world he sees that I live in, functions as interruptions and interventions. He finds a place for me to sit down, and this is the only way I am humanly possible. He says the crow, butterfly, Juneberry will come to be my relatives. Says trees speak, share their ideas just beneath me. Says the moon will carry thoughts into the sky until those thoughts are the moon's thoughts. Those will be a gift to the darkness. Says watch the little victories of the clouds in their constant splendor. Bending stems of the bamboo are in prayer pose, shading our gardens devotional cardinales, black-eyed Susan, and herbs. Sniff a flower for its innocence, he urges. See the chaos of bees, gold and purple bodies weaving a brocade scarf, crickets in the sawgrass, hum of summer. Listen. So it's easier for you to see. I really appreciate it for us. So afterwards, that's fine with me, just to kind of speed things up. So most poets are asked, well, how do you go about writing your poems, and when you get ideas, what do you do with them? And so I've been carrying this since I started poetry, a little notebook like this, and I jot things down that I observe or I read, because I'm at an age, I sometimes have these great thoughts at night, and when I wake up in the morning, they've disappeared. And they're the things I think are the gems that should be in my poems, but they never show up. So this poem is called Notebook. The landscape thinks its own thoughts in a 3.5 by 5.5 inch black moleskin reporter notebook. Sums of many extremely small indivisibles fits perfectly in my back pocket. Like all my notebooks, the first couple of pages are orderly curated content in manicured cursive. First, solastalgia, define a type of homesickness or melancholy that you feel when you're at home and your home environment is changing around you in ways that you feel are profoundly negative. Nomadic tribe of words, sentences, rambles from the lines in all directions as if attempting an escape. Refugees hanging over the railings of the boat of chance. Couplets waiting to bear a poem's weight. Some wait for others to hear, others fly around, sweeping cramped spaces, then open with the winds and the ripple loose. The rhyme of litany, I write as the tree writes, I write as snow writes, I write as blood writes, I write as summer writes. Some pages are blurred, smudged with lead from a pencil. Questions speedily, recklessly along the edges, crossing the outer layers of an idea. Fathoming what reality can bear. Can wind blow in stillness? And how does time bend on each end, arriving before leaving? What do you say when death is the honored guest? Forages in nature for the tender tips of rhizomes, wading into the narrow wetlands of wild rice. A note on Lantana's colonizing power. More intelligence gathering, something I recently heard a stranger say. Subject lines from emails in my spam folder. 5 things I'm going to remember about a day. Things I noticed on the ground while walking. Past conversations I recall while riding the bus. Names of dogs I might have seen today. Old clothing items I need to track down. Cloud shapes I recently seen. So I said that I would bring some food into my poems, and so this is a combination of describing me as a salad. So this is self-portrait as a salad. I am a good salad. I can mingle with romaine, radicchio, bok choy, endive, or kale, but not iceberg lettuce. I stay away from the nightshades. I am dressed in more than olive oil and spits of lemon. I am vinaigrette, aged balsamic vinegar, cold pressed virgin olive oil, cloves of mashed garlic, shallot, finely chopped. I'm a tablespoon of maple syrup, a pinch of cinnamon, ginger, thyme, turmeric, teaspoon of Dijon, salt and pepper, vigorously whisked. This is how I fit into the world. These are the ingredients of the happiness that comes over me. I'm not afraid of slices of radish paired with grapes. Don't mind an artichoke cozying up to some strawberries, black-eyed peas blending in with cubes of pineapple, or calamari olives challenging the cranberries. With bits of golden sultana raisins, almonds, and walnuts, I can embellish, sprinkling a light coat of goat or feta cheese crumbles. So this poem, it's not a food poem, it's a sestina, and I'm a swimmer, although I've taken some time off during the pandemic, so this is called freestyle, and it's in the form of the sestina, which I think most of the people in here probably have written or know about. It begins with six lines, A, B, C, D, E, F, and then it becomes an alternative. The first line of the second stanza uses the last line of the first stanza, and on and on. So this is called freestyle. I can teach you how to swim, show you how to streamline your body, move through the water like a fish, and use a two-beat kick, how to catch and pull the water, breathe from both sides. Yet I cannot teach you how to write a sestina. I cannot teach you how to create a prose poem out of a sestina, but I can show you how to make a roasted beet salad, which will keep you slim. How to make a fig vinaigrette on the side with eggplant parmesan for your main dish, and fresh baguette sprinkled with pesto and olive oil rather than smothered in butter. But I cannot explain how we can fix our body politic. If I tried, I would be called just another left-wing lunatic, just like some poet trying to put a glossy patina on a mediocre sestina, pointing the binding rod, witching words like water hidden in the earth. I'm trying my best to finish this poem before the lights in my head go dim. I could show you how to do a lot of other things, but the words are starting to vanish. To change the subject, my wife and I are coming to call the climate crisis assisted suicide. Ultimately, we're going to have to choose up sides as the denial of warming becomes a pandemic. Survival might depend on your knowing how to swim. In 2019, we had Whitman Festival 200, and there were many events in Philadelphia. I actually had 2 Philly Loves Poetry shows with poets in the city who participated in theme shows about Whitman, and it was really terrific. And it was a terrific year to be a poet and to be a part of that. So I did write a poem dedicated to Whitman. It's called For Whitman. I write as the molecules of oxygen and rice drinking in the iron dust coloring the earth's crust. I write as the patterns of earth write with the cursive of bands and stripes, ripples with curves, ribbons, swirls, spikes, and cracks. As the eroded salt crust writes in Death Valley, as the strings of Rapi lava on the Kalawao Big Island of Hawaii, as grooves and channels chiseled in the sandstone of a mason. I write as sheen before the eyes that writes with a sparrow fluffing in a tree, mind craving water. Or being still takes hold, gazing at the pleasure of beauty's indolence. I write as midnight writes over dark with foliage that glittered, or dancing with the moon, listening to the music of the universe inside. Writing in an empty radiance, a stillness where only a breath rules. I write as the anagrete of wildflowers, with the tips of needlegrass in a meadow, without the governance of pruning and weeding, with the blunted spear of a wild lupine, writes with the blaze of blue bonnets bowing to the showy goldenrods and wild indigo, as the bees write in spring, waiting for the slow, graceful prelude to the skyward arc of the stem. A steeple's write spreading wide with a blaze of color, inviting the bees to bury their heads in the beauty. As fireflies write in summer, turning glimmer into glow with a rhythm of flashes, luring children with stars. As the Mexican monarch butterfly writes, laying eggs of the new generation, gathering at the border, dreaming of the soft, velvety blossoms of milkweed. As the eel in fall, thick and tough and swimming up and up and up the Chesapeake, up the rivers, creeks, dams, overland to ponds, to the open waters for the final voyage to the Saragossa Sea. As crabs write, buried deep in the mud of the Chesapeake Bay, in winter, never feeding or moving. As Mother Nature writes, that I will not be deprived the freedom of my domain, Earth. So you keep me on time. I don't. Okay. So one of my favorite poets is Pablo Neruda. Strong attachment to him and other Spanish language poets, but definitely to Pablo. So bringing in the food theme, I wrote a poem as Making Soup with Pablo. Neruda has conjured eel fresh from the turbulent sea. I have 2 roasted fennel bowls, organic of course, from the farmer's market. Neruda with his charcoal-colored Pomeranian plate pot over an open fire pit pours a few tablespoons of rapeseed oil. I have an enamel cast iron pot over a low heat, the surface painted with 3 tablespoons of olive oil. Pablo dices a yellow onion. He waits for it to be transformed into curled feathers of gold. Then his garlic, with its angry fragrance, mixed in with the onions and tomato. He adds the agile essences, paprika, cayenne, pink peppers, chevriel, cardamom, and last, the salt. I place some onions, carrots, garlic, parsley, jalapeno pepper. Well, you have to excuse me, I got things out of order. Well, I will come back and find that, but it's a good poem. So this is, once again, the food thing. This is Zucchinis in Search of a Poem. I was late. The farmer's market had no squash of any kind, or eggplant, or cauliflower. Spring beans looked tired. Only a basket of steely drab green zucchinis remained. Yes, this is about food, creating complexity out of simplicity, liberating its weak, watery essence, transformed into richer flavors. Imagine the spectrum of processes: marinating, caramelizing, casseroling, pureeing, stir-frying, sauteing, simmering, peel or not, diced or curved, sliced horizontally, maybe over a flame skewered with peppers, tomatoes, or paired with pine nuts, olives, and grapes, tossed with mixed greens, dressed with vinaigrette, hidden in salad, perhaps hollowed into a boat loaded with burrata cheese topped with calamari olives. At home, my wife took custody of the zucchinis for dinner, peeled and sliced, sauteed the onions, placed a roasting dish, covered over with a blanket of stewed tomatoes, sprinkled some Parmesan cheese, a casserole, postmodern minimalism. So I said, Brooke acknowledged that I have work to raise money for Haiti, primarily for one specific mission. It's called Hands Together, that was founded by a priest, an oblate priest from Philadelphia, who went to school in Philadelphia. His name is Father Tom Hagen. And he went to Haiti with a group of students from Princeton University. He was the chaplain at Princeton. And he went there, and it was a major experience for him. And he decided he was going to come back and start this mission, or build on a very small mission. And over the years, all this time, he has built 8 schools. He's started a reforestation program, which is very critical to Haiti because the forest was completely devastated. There was no really planning to any of this. He has mobile health clinics. He has food distribution twice a week of dry goods. He feeds these young people, it's probably the only meal that they have. And so many other things that he has done, especially for young people and employment. So, I went there in 2005 with a friend of mine who said, I want you to come with me, I want you to see this. He said, I know you've seen a lot, in your life with abused children in North Philadelphia conditions, but this will be a very different experience for you. And it really was. We worked at an infirmary in an orphanage, which was just around the block for 2 weeks. And essentially, we fed children and gave them medicine. And we did play with some of the children in the orphanage under supervision. And it really it really cracked me open. And so I ride back after 2 weeks in Miami airport with my friend. I cried. And he said, Charles, the same thing happened to me. He said, the Haitians don't need your tears. You have to decide what you're going to do with what you saw. So that's why I really set out to, and I asked Tom, what can I do? He says, well, you can go out and you can raise money for us. So I've been doing appeals for Hands Together for close to 10 years. So I go out to these churches, mostly in Western Pennsylvania and in Delaware, some up in Brooklyn, to raise money. And it's incredible how generous people are. And once they hear this story, how much they give. I'll just tell you one story. I was up in this very poor parish in Western Pennsylvania. And actually, this priest had to take care of 3 parishes. That's the way it is in the Catholic Church these days. And this church must have been a converted Baptist church with, cinder block walls, etc. But the priest was great. We said mass. He had he gave me the homily to do the appeal. And I was walking out, and this elderly lady came up to me. She had a house dress on, and she stuck a piece of paper, a check in my hand. I said, thank you very much. So we walked back, and I opened the check, and it was $300. $300. I said, I just can't believe it. Nobody's giving me $300 for the mission. But here's this lady who was so struck by it. She read the pamphlet, before she came actually to mass. So anyway, it's still a struggle. It's more of a struggle today in Haiti. It's really chaos in Haiti right now, where the gangs have taken over. I met gang leaders when I was there, but they were much more political and they were smaller. And Father Tom had relations. They were like kind of the mafia, in the sense that they would say to Tom, we want you to hire this person as a cook or an aide or something like that. And he would try to do the best he can to accommodate them. But anyway, this poem is called Comfort Food. A giant supermarket sits squarely in the heart of Haydenville, a cathedral for consumption, 2 blocks from 2 tent cities where women walk with spray bottles filled with bleach and samifying powder fend off the gang's bang. You walk inside, leaving Haiti, then the noise begins. Noise of their eyes in your heart, of your shopping cart, barreling through the aisles as fast as you can, grabbing things before the noises of those who could never afford anything here living on $2 a day catches up to you before you check out. The noise of choices compared to those who have few, as you look at different varieties of ginger ale, brands of chips, 40 brands of cereal, peaches from South Carolina, beefsteak tomatoes from Jersey, mushrooms from Maryland. The noise Brie makes when it lands in your cart, thinking of yourselves, this would be a delicious thing smeared on a baguette with some brown sugar and walnut. The sprawling street markets that you avoided today to come here, that big truck to save Haiti that keeps rumbling by. Taking the elevator to the second floor, watching someone drinking an espresso in front of an area devoted to wines and liquors. Strings of a guitar accompanying voices of the children from the orphanage singing the Beatitudes hymn at morning mass. Blessed are they who have shown mercy. Blessed are they who hunger and thirst for righteousness, for they will be satisfied. Blessed are they who have come to collect the blessing for that little sliver of excessiveness to cope with a really bad day at the infirmary. Listening to the scratching noise of guilt as you grab a tub of Starbucks hot chocolate ice cream, thinking about the comforts of home, picturing curling up next to the oscillating fan, closing your eyes. Comfort. I had one poem I just wanted to close with, and it's called The Little Poem. The little poem keeps the world at a distance, so small one could actually step on it. It's got next to nothing, thin as a piece of linen, a pulse with no body. One wonders how it could survive on a page. Stands motionless, listening to itself pass and return again and again. No longer curious, it stopped adapting and responding to the changing conditions, stopped exploring ways to describe a universe in flux, or mimic the crying out of another species facing extinction. It fears how little power language now has over the truth, says the word beautiful will remain while the world vanishes. When asked where it's been, it answers nowhere. Why? Am I boring you? Thank you very much. Thank you, Britt. Thank you very much. Copies of both my books are available over there. You can buy both for, each one is $5, and anything that you get, the books will go to May Poets. So even if you don't like my poetry, this is an excuse to give something back to May Poets. Thank you again.